Welcome to the Zen of Reffing Roller Derby. Lesson 11, The Head Referee. I'm Axis of Stevel, the author of this training manual. I'm filming this on May 25th, 2018. The content of this presentation is up to date as of this recording. Should this video become obsolete or replaced by a newer version, I'll place a link on the screen to where you can find more information. As always, you can find the latest version of the full training manual at www.tinyurl.com/zenreffing. A quick disclaimer. The WFTDA, MRDA, and JRD are not responsible for the content in the training manual or this presentation, nor do they make any claims as to the accuracy of its content. So Lesson 11, the head referee. A head referee is actually two different jobs. Number one, you've got the head referee of a game, and number two, you have the head referee of a league. These are not the same thing. There are many people that head referee games that are not the head referee or head official of a league. Similarly, there are many people that are the head official of a league in charge of the administration duties, but they do not actually head referee games. These are two totally different things. As far as the rules are concerned, a game needs to have a head referee, but the rules make no comment, nothing on how a league runs its administrative duties regarding the referees. As far as the rules are concerned, a league does not have to have a head referee. We're going to talk about them both at different times during this lesson. Let's start by talking about the head referee during a game. The head referee has a number of duties that they have to do both before and after the game. Number one, they have to do pre-game and halftime officials meetings. Typically before a game, the head referee meets with all the staff, both referees and NSOs, and the head referee and the head NSO jointly conduct a meeting where they basically do everything from introducing everybody to each other to setting some of the ground rules and ground procedures on how things are going to be done during the particular game. They'll also meet again at halftime. Usually this time they're meeting separately. The head NSO can meet with any NSOs that they feel that they need to catch up with and talk about how things went in the first half. The referees, though, which is the side that I know, the referees basically meet again as a group, and they go over both how the first half of the game went, as well as they discuss any feedback that the team captains or coaches provided to them. The head referee similarly has a pregame meeting with the captains. The head NSO is almost always present and ideally should be present for this meeting. At this meeting, the head referee will discuss, again, policies, procedures, how they're going to do things during the game. They're introducing themselves. They're setting basically beginning to set up that atmosphere of impartiality and fairness and trust, and ideally saying that, we're all going to work together to make this game work. The captains also, if they have any concerns or any strategies that they want to discuss, because they can meet privately after the captain's meeting if they want to. Like if they've got a sneaky little strategy they want to do and they just want to make sure that the head referee is aware of it so they can go talk about it with their crew, they can do all that. Basically, they work out any details of the game that need to be just gone over and just smoothed out in advance of the game. They also will meet, the head referee will meet again with the captains or the coaches at halftime. This is an optional meeting, and a head referee, I will tell people at the captains' meetings that I will make myself available for the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes of halftime for the captains. And if they have any feedback for me or that they'd like to bring, they're welcome to do so. If they do not come find me during those times, or find me during some other time during halftime, then I will just assume that they have no feedback to give. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's entirely up to the captains if they wish to get back to me. A head referee will also reassign positions as necessary. This could be done for any number of reasons. Like in the pregame, this is basically done because, oh my God, somebody's sick, or, their car broke down, or they're late, or they just haven't showed, or whatever, and they can reassign positions as necessary. The head NSO traditionally is dealing with this on the NSO side because they know their staff much better than the head referee does. In theory, the head referee is the ultimate arbiter of the game, and in theory they could, shift to NSOs, but they're really not going to. They're going to leave that up to the jurisdiction of the head NSO. The head referee in a game environment, technically speaking, outranks the head NSO, but the reality is the two of them work together. It's like you can be the boss on a teeter-totter, but if you don't have the other person on the teeter-totter working with you to make it go back and forth, it's not going to work very well. That's the head referee and the head NSO. So in conjunction with the head NSO, they're verifying that the NSO positions are adequately staffed. This is usually not a problem, but it never hurts to, talk to the head NSO, prior to the officials meeting and say, hey, how's our NSO staff for today? Are you comfortable with this? Anybody you're a little wary about? Is there anything I should be letting the refs know? For example, if you have one or two very novice scorekeepers, you might just give the JAMR referees just a little heads up in advance that their scorekeepers may need a little extra assistance, during the game, and to check in with them a little more often. This doesn't have to be done at the officials meeting, where it could be potentially undermining the scorekeeper's confidence in himself. But, it doesn't always hurt to just give someone a little heads up they need to help someone else out. This is, all officials are working together as a team in this respect, and we want to both preserve people's dignity when we work together, but also assist them during the game if they're going to need that extra little bit of help, a little oomph to make it through the game. The head referee will also confirm that the emergency medical, EMTs basically, but the medics, whoever the emergency medical personnel, they confirm that they are present. They'll discuss an emergency action plan with them. There are a number of different things that you can discuss, and I'll come back to it in a later lesson, or at least I should come back into it in a later lesson. I've got a couple ideas on when to do that. So the head referee will confirm the track is correctly set up. Just make sure that they got all the dimensions right. I have been to games where they botched the pivot and jammer lines, and they were like 5 feet off from where they were going to be. And I remember one game where the head referee said, no, we're not going to bother fixing it. They'll just live with it. Which is really not what you want to do. But nevertheless, they did this one game, and I couldn't override him. So as a result, the skaters, every time they went to go line up, they found themselves lining up 5 feet off from the jammer line, and they're like, oh, we're not in position. Then they had to kind of move. So it threw everybody out of whack. The feng shui of the game was not in order. So make sure the track is correctly set up. That also includes making sure that the safety lanes on the outside are of the correct dimensions, that benches and chairs are not being set up too close to the safety lane. Some of this you're working in conjunction with bout production to do, but generally speaking, you want to make sure that the track is correctly set up and that no one is going to be in danger near the track because of the way the track is set up. Head referee will also provide verbal feedback to the referees and NSOs. This is usually more like a post-game thing, maybe a little bit of halftime. If somebody wants to know, how am I doing out there? Have you watched what I'm doing? What are you seeing over there? Certainly you can provide feedback to them. Generally speaking, it's going to be the head NSO providing much more feedback to the NSO crew. But sometimes the NSOs will ask. Like a jam timer and the head referee will interact quite a bit. So a jam timer might go directly to the head referee asking for feedback. Sometimes, it's a good idea that if you have feedback for the NSOs, you might choose to send that through the head NSO and they can pass it on, because they can make it, add it, and combine it with what they know of the person's skills and with their own observations during the game. But, it's kind of up to you how you want to work this out as head referee. Head referee after a game will fill out certification evaluations for crew members, either when requested or as appropriate. Certification, we haven't really talked about that. It's basically a way for referees to get, I don't have one on this uniform, but they basically get a patch on their arm, and it demonstrates they have achieved a certain level of mastery of their reffing skills. And towards that, they need a certain level of evaluations that they get during games. They're not required anymore. The cert system's kind of in flux at the moment. It's changing. But basically, evaluations help them and let the certification system know how the referee is actually doing on a game-by-game basis. So providing those evaluations can be very helpful. Not all games can be evaluated. Sometimes you don't need to do a formal evaluation, send it through cert. You can just give the verbal feedback. It varies. An evaluation does not have to be requested. You can just do one. If you have a referee that just did a particularly good or bad job, you might choose to just simply put in evaluation. That can be very helpful if you ever have a referee that just loses their shit and basically becomes very unprofessional during a game, for example. You want the certification system to know it because you had a referee that was not behaving in an acceptable manner, and you want it documented. That's very rare. That would just be one case of it. There are many, many other reasons that you might want to do evaluations when the person has not asked for it. Finally, head referee during a game, they sign what's called the IGRF, which I don't even know what that stands for. The inter-game, I don't know, record form, I don't know what it is. Anyway, basically in sanctioned games, there's some paperwork that has to be handed in to the association, JRDA, WIFTA, MRDA, and this is the cover page of the paperwork that verifies the game was held according to the rules, verifies the number of penalties, verifies the final score, the rosters, the staff, etc. And the referee just, head referee signs that when the game ends. If it's a sanctioned game, do not leave the venue without signing this, because it's very important this gets signed. You're going to have a very irate head NSO if you leave without signing this, because now they're going to have to, they've got like 2 or 3 days to get this done and sent in, or not only a few days, I don't know the exact number. And if you leave without that, now they got to be faxing it back and forth to people, and it's a nightmare. So make sure you sign that. It is very important. There's some additional paperwork that you may also have to fill out as necessary in certain games, certain expulsion paperwork. If there were certain abnormal events or occurrences that occurred during the game that might show up in a grievance, for example, the power went out of the venue for 45 minutes during the game, and then the power came on, the game continued, or something like that. That might be specified on that, or within like an additional letter or something attached. So, sign what you need to do. Your head NSO will walk you through all this. They should know how to handle the IGRF. For regulation games, some will do an IGRF, but they usually don't bother signing it because it's not being submitted. Non-regulation games, there's usually no IGRF at all. Now we're going to talk about duties during a game. Those were both before and after the game. Now we're talking about during the game. Number 1, you're monitoring the penalty box queue. We've been talking about that this is something that the IPRs and the OPRs are doing. Well, the head referee, again, you're usually an IPR, so you're monitoring the penalty box queue. You're sending skaters back to the queue as box space allows. As a variation on this, at the beginning of the second half of the game, as the head referee, don't begin the second half until you've got skaters back where they're supposed to be. So if you've got a skater who's supposed to be in the jam, make sure that they've lined up for the jam in progress. The skaters forget over the halftime, oh, I was supposed to be in the box, oh, I'm supposed to be in the jam. We're not looking for gotcha penalties here. So just verify with your box staff and with the head NSO that you've got skaters correctly returned to the box that are supposed to be there, correctly taking place in the jam, so that way we can get that all smoothly going for the second half. During the game, you're going to manage official reviews. We're going to have an entire lesson on that, but as we've said before, it's basically when a team wants to appeal a decision, made by the officials during a game, and again, we'll talk about all this more later, but you're seeking consensus among the referee staff, and really it's more the officiating staff. It's usually more the referees that are involved in official review, but there are many times it's very important to bring the non-skating officials into the discussion. You're generally trying to seek a consensus among them about the action as it took place and how it should be resolved. Consensus is not always possible, in which case you serve as the final arbiter on how it's going to actually be resolved. The head referee needs to ensure the accuracy of the score and game clocks. Towards this end, you've got a jam timer who's working on this, you've got a scoreboard operator who's working on this, you've got a head NSO who's usually keeping an eye on this as well. But nevertheless, it ultimately falls to the head referee to make sure this gets done. And I had a game, for example, one day where Jam 1, the scoreboard operator they got the time to start, but something went wrong and they couldn't get points to occur on it or something, and there's like 4 people all hunched over the scoreboard, and I did not notice this because, it's Jam 1 of the game. I'm watching watching what's going on. The jam ends. Jam 2, the lineup for Jam 2. Jam 2 begins. They still haven't gotten the score on there, from the first half. And then finally Jam 2 ends, and that's when they request an official timeout from the scoreboard to say, hey, we can't get the score on here. We're having some problem. I don't know if they had to reboot the software or what. The problem was that they took too long. Under the rules, you can only alter the score of what occurred in the prior jam or the lineup to the prior jam. So by the end of turn Jam 2, you can no longer add those points that were supposed to be in there in Jam 1. They took too long to notify me. They should not have let Jam 2 begin if they could not guarantee they were going to be able to get the score on there from Jam 1. and I was not keeping an eye on that. As a result, I had to go to one of the teams and tell them, sorry, you're screwed out of your Jam 1 points. We've fixed the error, but you didn't. One team did not score any points in Jam 1. Your team did. You're just not going to get those points because we failed to get that right. So, again, just keep an eye on the scoreboard and the game clocks, particularly at the beginning of a game, just to make sure that they are correctly recording points and the clocks are actually running. The head referee enforces and oversees skater expulsions. The head referee is the only person in a game who is allowed to expel a skater or a member of the bench staff, and you do not do so lightly. There's going to be a very there's a pretty set protocol on both how this is done and when this can be done, and we will have an entire lesson later on expulsions. But nevertheless, when it is necessary, the head referee has to be the one to go and give the word to the skater, and or at least inform the team. We'll talk about more of this later. Head referee is in charge of the skater expulsions. The head referee, as I said, will reassign officials. We talked before about how they do that in the lead up to a game if somebody doesn't show up, but they can also do that during a game. So, for example, if a skater is unable to perform or poorly performing their duties, this doesn't mean that the skater is that the official is bad at their job. I had a game, I think I mentioned this in another lesson, where a referee was injured. It was just a skater got knocked out of bounds and smacked him in the leg by accident, and the person was no longer able to serve as jam referee. They basically limped through the last jam of the first half, and then they were out. They couldn't do it anymore. So unable to perform their duties does not mean they're bad. They could be injured, or sick or whatever. If necessary, you reassign the officials, and you do that, basically take a timeout, and then between jams, you reassign where everybody's going to be to make sure that the game can continue. Let's see, league duties. This is now more like the head referee of a league. And again, this is not the head referee of a game. The head referee supervises the league's referee staff. They're in charge of recruiting referees, training referees, assessing them, basically like making sure that they're staying still on their skills and rules knowledge. They're in charge of retention. It is far easier to keep a referee happy and continuing to ref than it is to recruit and train a new one. They will deal with conflict resolution. They will often interact with other, other leagues. For example, your league is going to go play another league, so the two head referees of the two different leagues are now interacting with each other to make sure that the game is adequately staffed. My advice towards this, by the way, is see if you can get your league to, if you're head referee of a league, to show you the bout contracts, ideally before they're signed, so you can read through the contract and then notify them if there's something that's absent. For example, it is customary, not required, but it is customary that the visiting league have an opportunity to bring several refs and NSOs. But there might be things in that contract that might surprise you. I've come across at least one contract that said that if our league did not supply a certain number of refs and NSOs, the league would be financially penalized for it. So the league might have signed the contract but not notified me, and now I wouldn't necessarily be making sure that we have the right number of refs and NSOs going. So that would have been a problem. So you kind of want to keep on what's going on in the contracts, and if the league is going to sign something that has some very odd liabilities or missing things, you can kind of inform the league about that. But generally speaking, you're supervising the referee staffing, working with other leagues. You are in charge of the administrative side of the refs. The head referee of a league will also assist the coaching staff and the team captain with rules training for the skaters. That is really up to the coaches and the captain how well and how often they want the skaters to learn the rules. There are conflicting priorities, on the skater side. They do benefit from learning the rules, but obviously they got to work on their skills. They got to, like their skating skills. They got to work on their blocking skills. There's a lot they need to work on. It's competing priorities, and rules knowledge sometimes loses, and the skaters don't learn them particularly well. And you'll see this when you're in a game, and you're like, and there the skater goes with their 5th cut penalty this entire game because they don't know what the cutting rules are, and they're getting hit by it. So we will certainly assist them with the rules training, but it is not our job to, argue that, no, they need more rules training. We're going to push this, we serve at the pleasure of the league in this respect. If they don't want the rules training, that's their prerogative. They can rack up those penalties if they wish. That is their strategic decision to make. A head referee of a league will assist the head NSO with rules training for the NSO staff. While NSOs do learn the rules, they learn them in a different way than the referees. The rules that are important for the NSOs are not the same thing always as the rules that are important for referees, and to some extent vice versa. It's still very helpful, though, to have somebody at certain NSO trainings who is very, very, very conversant in the rules. Usually the head NSO is going to know the rules as they apply towards NSOs, but not always. Sometimes you've got a new head NSO and they need a little bit of assistance with the rules side of things, or even just an inexperienced head NSO. So, providing that assistance is very helpful. Head referee of a league will coordinate scheduling of the referee staff for games and scrimmages. As I said, you're talking to the other, the other league. Are you bringing any referees, or do we need to send any referees to you, etc. But you're also coordinating with the staff for the game itself. It's traditional you send out like an email a couple weeks, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, in advance, to your staff. You're letting know the schedule. You're letting basically know, okay, this is the call time for the game. This is when first whistle's going to be. This is the estimated time of the officials meeting. These are your assignments, over here. These are the positions that I'm expecting everyone to do. These are my expectations for everybody. This is the dress code for the game. Will we be, doing evaluations? If so, who do you need to request them from and when? Like a variety of information. Even things like, is there an after party? Or what do the officials like to do after the game? Do they go out to a diner? Do they go to the after party? Just letting people kind of know what's up. Basically, you just keep that information flowing to the officials in the game. And let's see. Finally, you serve as sort of an officiating liaison to the league's administration, and you're doing this in equal levels to the head NSO of the league. Basically, the league administration, leagues and their referees don't always see eye to eye. They have conflicting priorities, and they have different visions for how the officiating within a league should work, or how training and such. You basically keep those lines of communications open. The better of a relationship you have with your league, probably the better it's going to be for your officiating crew. I have seen everything from referee and NSO crews that have wonderful, terrific, strong relationships with their league, and I have seen them also where a league has decided to fire their entire referee crew, and they're just more trouble than they're worth, and we're going to get rid of them all. That usually comes back to bite them in the ass a couple of years later when they discover that, gee, we really could use some referees if we want to scrimmage, and we have no one here to train the new refs. So we have people that want to be refs, and we don't know how to train them because we fired all our experienced people. But that is their prerogative. As I said, we serve at the pleasure of a league. 2 final notes on head referees. Number 1, while all referees should be remaining professional and calm at all times, this is doubly true for the head referee. The head referee needs to be just calm, stoic. They've got it. Don't show anger. Don't show irritation. Part of maintaining control over the game and not letting the game control the officiating crew is being able to project that calm, confident, I've got this, just sort of a mastery, over the game. Your crew will respond to this. If you are getting emotional and irate and angry, that will throw off your crew, and it will also affect the skaters and the coaches as well. As I said in previous lesson, sometimes they will try to get to you. So those crew, or the skaters or the coaches, they will try to get in your head and mess with you. You absolutely do not want to allow to them. Remain professional and calm at all times. Second, a head referee should have an exceptional mastery of the game's rules. The rules of the game do not allow the head referee to invent, ignore, or alter existing rules. They need to know what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Towards that end, like I said, know the game's rules in and out. The rules will not define what to do in all situations. There's a certain level of discretion that has to be had when there's just cases where the rules don't say. And the referee at that point can make some very severe mistakes and make some bad ideas on how to deal with things. having that mastery of the game's rules allows you to back up, look at the bigger picture, consider, well, there are 3 casebook scenarios that talk about this and this and this, and based on this, we're going to take this approach. So it is very useful to have that. If you're head reffing games and you're just not an expert on the game's rules, that can be okay, but make sure you've got someone on your crew who's got that, because there will be times during an official review that you're going to be like, and you're not quite sure how to resolve something because you don't quite know how the rules affect on something, and that's when your expert on the rules can be of assistance. When you can say, how do the rules specify this? You know them better than I do, and the person can then say, oh well, based on rule this and the scenario this, we should take this approach. It's a good way to resolve these things. That concludes Lesson 11, the head referee. We'll be back in Lesson 12 with... No, I've skipped ahead. No, not 17. Lesson 12 with the penalty box. Thank you.